Hallo alle zusammen. Es ist Montagabend, Livestream-Zeit bei Irish Whiskies. Und wie so oft montags habe ich heute wieder jemanden aus Irland zu Gast und freue mich sehr, Chris Haynes von der Teeling Distillery begrüßen zu dürfen. Und wir werden euch heute ein bisschen über Teeling erzählen und 4 Whiskys gemeinsam verkosten. Hi Chris, it's great to have you here on the stream tonight. Thank you very much for taking your time and chatting about Teeling whiskey and the Teeling Distillery. Maybe you can tell a bit about your job at Teeling, who you are, what are you doing at Teeling?
Yeah, absolutely. Just first of all, thanks a million, Mareike, for having me on. It's great to be with you tonight and talk all things Irish whiskey. So yeah, what I do for Teeling is I work for them as a brand ambassador. I work both out of our brand home based right in the heart of Dublin city centre and Newmarket Square, and I spend a lot of my time flying the flag for Irish whiskey across our European markets. So I have the very enjoyable job of learning new cultures and meeting new people and discovering wonderful whiskies around the world.
Very good. So normally you are traveling a lot, but not this year.
Now I'm virtually traveling.
Yes, virtually. Very good. Yeah. So
yeah. It's a little bit cheaper, I can tell you.
Yeah, I think so. But not as exciting as Beyond the Place.
I don't know. I've personally found a lot of enjoyment from virtual activations and going online. Like, I think that although, don't get me wrong, it comes with its challenges, I think there's been a lot of new, I suppose, immersive experiences and ways to communicate with consumers that we never had before. So I've actually really enjoyed it, all the virtual stuff so far.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
Yeah, it goes without saying I'd love to be with people in person, you know, at fairs like Munich Finest Spirits or Nuremberg the Village or BCB or, you know, any of the smaller ones. But I think it's great to have this as well.
Yeah, that's right. Have you been on the Nuremberg show this year?
This year, no, actually, it was my colleague James. I'm pretty sure that I had a clash, and I've really enjoyed it in the past. You know, that variety that you get, not just spirits, but also food and music and everything else. But no, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to it this year. The very last whiskey fair that I did before all of this madness was in Belgium. So I did Ghent Whiskey Festival. Which was a lot of fun, but seems, as you can imagine, Mareike, like a lifetime ago now at this stage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my last trade show was the one in Nuremberg. It was in March, and it was can we do it? Can we do it not? And we did it, and it was so great fun. And now, yeah, since March, no trade shows. And here we have first come from. So we have lots of hellos from the people, and Tina says, Teeling's doing great online tastings. I know that she has been participating some of your online tastings and ordered some sets. So very good.
That's very kind of you to say, Tina. Thank you.
And Kevin saw already the Black Pits. Yes. We try a very new one tonight. Yeah. And to tell you a secret, I do not really like peated whiskey. So my opinion might be very important tonight about how your peated whiskey will be.
Absolutely. No, I think it would be very interesting to get your feedback, and it's I'm sure we'll talk about it later on to finish, but it's very much an unconventional peated single malt. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts.
I was at the distillery at the first time when peated whiskey was distilled.
Oh,
and the distillery smelled of the peated new make, so it's interesting. I tried from the peated new make a bit, and now I can taste the whiskey tonight. So very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember trying it from casks, and I remember the initial anticipation when we first started distilling peated malts. And for someone who, you know, I first got into the industry actually drinking peated whiskies before I got into kind of other, and as well as, you know, your typical crappy bourbons. Main two you'll kind of find in Dublin pubs, and even back in the 90s and early 2000s was kind of Ardbeg and Freut. So that's sort of what I grew up on, and then very quickly transitioned into the good stuff, into Irish whiskey, and found my love of it there. But it's great to have it as a topic of discussion in Ireland. You know, there's so much going on, as you know. Obviously, we were just talking about the whiskey weekend. Like, there's so much diversity in Ireland that there's just so much to talk about, be it pot still and like what's going on all there with all the new producers looking at their own, you know, interpretation of single pot still, or the whole terroir, you know, kind of conversation, and where is it coming from, or what kind of specialty grains, what kind of subcategories can we use, as well as the massive spectrum that is, you know, just maturation on its own. Like, I think Ireland possibly has the most flexibility or freedom when it comes down to maturing, which is just so cool.
Yeah, it's I think it's very nice to see that so many whiskeys are matured in so different casks, because when I started selling Irish whiskey in 2011, there was just bourbon cask, or then there was the Tyrconnell range, but there was not so many different cask maturing Irish whiskeys. And I think Teeling did a very big milestone in maturing the whiskeys in so many different casks, giving a very different finish to the whiskeys. And I think Teeling was the first ones who were getting more experimental. And
absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I still remember the first whiskey that I tried from Teeling, which was the small batch. My father actually had a bottle of the small batch at home, and it's how I first tasted it. And I still remember at the time just finding it so unusual and left of center to anything that was on the market at the moment, at the time in 2015, 2016. And of course, you know, our aim is very much to push the flavor boundaries within Irish whiskey, still kind of paying respect to our grassroots, or our tradition, because there is a long heritage when it comes to, you know, whiskey production in Ireland. But I completely agree with you. I think it was a breath of fresh air in 2015, and we've only really gone from strength to strength. You know, we now have over 100 different cask types in our warehouse. And since we've set up, we've picked up, you know, the guts now of, I think, 300 awards, including last year with our 24-year-old, the best single malt in the world. So it's great to have, you know, these learnings and continue to get better at what we do.
Yeah, that's very good. So maybe we should go to the first whiskey and talk a bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy.
I recommend to start with a pot still whiskey, so whiskey from your distillery, which was distilled in Dublin. And I just found also a glass from which I got at the distillery.
Oh, nice! You're on brand and everything. Like it. Good stuff. We couldn't have planned that if we tried. But yeah, this one's really interesting. The first kind of, I suppose, interesting fact that not many people know is just the actual design of the bottle. You know, that dark, or kind of light blue, I should say, color is almost emblematic of Dublin itself. You know, let's not forget, this was the first whiskey distilled in Dublin in nearly 50 years. So the history alone is incredible. That, you know, in my lifetime and in your lifetime, this is the first whiskey come out of Dublin for our generation. So for modern whiskey consumers. And we did a ton of work on the single pot still. You know, it's something we're very proud of. I'm coming from Dublin, as you've probably detected, Mareike, from my thick accents. We originally, so we went with a, I suppose, relatively traditional mash bill of malted and unmalted barley. Now, of course, this is a style, as you well know, that's geographically protected, that cannot be made in any other country in the world, that has to be made in Ireland. So it has these deep roots, not only in Ireland, but in Dublin as well. You know, the Dublin distillers in the 18th and 17th century really heralded this style and put it on the map on the global whiskey stage. We've gone with a slightly more modern approach in terms of the maturation. So we tried out actually the guts of somewhere between 20 to 30 different cask types when we first started the maturation. Now, this was everything from various different wood variants, so like the likes of chestnut, the likes of Portuguese oak, the likes of American white oak, French oak, different ex-barrels, so, you know, different alcohols from wine, fortified wines, really seeing what were the best cask types that would allow our spirit to speak and allow our spirit to come through. So we did first a series of batches, 3 in total. You'll probably still maybe find some of them around Germany still to this day. And the reasoning behind it was very much to keep reworking the recipe and take learnings from it. And I suppose have, this discourse with pot still enthusiasts and get feedback and see, what do you think? And really take it from there. The batch number 1, actually, we did originally 6,000 bottles. But before that, we did about 150, which were exclusively matured in Muscat. And we auctioned them off and gave all the proceeds back to charity. Now, believe it or not, bottle number 1, so 001, I think sold for about 12,000 euro or 10,000 sterling in total, which is, yeah. Did you manage to pick up a bottle yourself?
Yeah.
But that one there, it's not a brag on our behalf. It very much showcases the interest in the Irish whiskey category at the moment. Bear in mind, this whiskey was 3 years old. Yeah. So it does goes to show the interest in what's happening in Ireland. So the one that you're drinking tonight with myself, Mareike, this is the commercial release after those 3 batches of about 6,000 bottles per run. We kind of refined the recipe, and eventually we were exceptionally happy with this final result. It's Oloroso sherry, American bourbon barrels, and some virgin American oak. So it's split about 50%, 25-25, and really just is an incredible new addition to single pot style, in my opinion.
The nose is very good. I would like to do something because I have the batch 3 here.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So, and from my mind, because I had the batch 3 in a blind tasting, I think batch 3 is much different on the nose. I have
absolutely. It's night and day for me, and I'm sure you'll pick up your own tasting notes. But for me, batch 3 is much heavier on those kind of autumnal spices like cinnamon, dark sugar, and anise. Whereas I think with the commercial release, it's a little bit lighter and kind of builds really, really well, which is what I love about it. The commercial release, I think it's absolutely fantastic. So you might be picking up things like stewed pears or apples on the nose. Pot still is very characteristic of these green spices typically. A lot of people will say it's apples? Green apple skins. There's kind of the malic acids. But it has a lot of kind of structural similarities with triple distilled rye. I know rye whiskey is making a big comeback in Germany, or I should say is being introduced. But you get a little bit of that spice coming through after those green apples and poached pears, which are really, really nice. The likes of cinnamon or nutmeg or cloves on the nose.
It's really nice. It's much nicer than the batch 3 on the nose.
So, of course, just goes to show whiskey is very much not a science, as we all know. Yeah. It's much more an art form, much more a test and learn. And I think this is a great example of that, where we were refining the recipe over time. Each of these batches now will never be reproduced again. So they're good for collectability, as well as opening up and tasting. But the oily mouthfeel really comes through on the palate. That 50-50 of malted, unmalted barley, and obviously 46%, that carries through with the mouthfeel and the finish.
You have a much more complex mouthfeel on the commercial release. The batch 3 is much sharper. And as you said, batch 3 is already better than batch 2, but the commercial release is much better than the batches before. This is my opinion.
Do you think so? Yeah.
Because you have the nose is fuller, you have more aromas on the nose. As you said, they're lighter, they're sweeter, but you have also a bit of these pot still spices. And the nose on batch 3 is much sharper.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Mareike. And I remember having this conversation with Alex, our master distiller, master blender, Alex Chasko, and he was saying that the biggest balance was between the Oloroso sherry and the virgin oak.
Yeah.
You know, the virgin oak obviously is going to add all of that sandalwood and spice and earthiness, and you will get that from certain styles of sherry. But the sherry was looking to kind of round that off. And I think on the nose and on the palate, it is definitely a little bit rounder in general terms.
So I can tell the people they should order the Irish Whiskey Weekend tasting set to have a try of the commercial release of the Teeling pot still, because I don't know if you can get it already very good in Germany. So you should have a try of this. It's very good.
Absolutely. Yeah, more than recommended.
And we have a question here. What can we expect of a Teeling pot still in 10 or 12 years? Will Redbreast learn to fear? Very good question.
Love it, Fabio. Love it.
Yeah.
Short answer, yes. No, I'm only joking. I think that, it's very exciting times for the future of Teeling. You know, absolutely. I think as our stock progresses and as we, have older age statements of single pot still, it's definitely something to look out for in the future. At the moment, there's a ton of different areas that we're looking at. So it's not just single pot still is kind of the only area we're homing in on. But I think definitely it's something that will be very, very exciting in the years to come, for sure. And I suppose just to reiterate on the Redbreast note, we are very much looking to create a whiskey that is pushing against the norms of other Irish whiskies and really going, on our own path. So we're not trying to recreate a replicate of these fantastic, well-established Irish single pot stills. We're very much looking to make our own impression. And I think we've proven that with, our own single pot still release so far.
Yeah. What I would find very interesting is that a Redbreast has always a sherry finish. And when you say you were experimenting with cask, or maybe bringing out just the bourbon cask matured pot still whiskey when it's 10, 12, 15 years old, because I think when you want to have really good pot still notes, just matured in bourbon cask, it needs some time in the cask. That would be interesting to see. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose, we still do have our signifiers or our DNA. Like with Teeling, our points of difference are very much, number one, focus on the mash bill, which is 50-50. With other distilleries, you could be looking closer to 60-40 or maybe even 70-30. So with us, we kind of hit that sweet spot of 50% malt and 50% unmalted barley, having that nice balance between the green spices and the earthiness, and then also the lovely sweetness from the malt. Also then our yeasts, we are renowned for our experimentation on really every single stage of the process, and the fermentation is no exception. We're using a combination of both white wine yeast, so dried white wine yeast coming from South Africa, which is a big vehicle for flavor in the fermentation. The yeast, it produces esters and aldehydes and carbon dioxide and alcohol, and it really is kind of the backbone of our new make spirit, if you will. So this is combined with a distiller's yeast during the fermentation. And of course, we've wooden washbacks as well, which add an extra layer during that stage. And then when we get to our stills, we are running them a little bit differently. We're typically making two cuts. So one at about 50 to 55% ABV, and then a second at 80 to 84%. If any of you get a chance, I'd actually highly recommend tasting our Spirit of Dublin, our poitín, as we call it in Irish, which basically means a small pot of something. That's a kind of a good indication of, just one of the many spirits that we produce on a daily and yearly basis from Teeling. Yeah,
that's right. I can also recommend that. And Tina says the pot still only in the bourbon cask was also in the tasting last Thursday. It was really good.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to hear, Tina. So I know that we've been tasting some of the individual components, and we have actually done these as single casks so far in our distillery as distillery exclusives, and I've really enjoyed tasting the individual components, be that sherry or bourbon or even virgin oak on its own is very, very unusual. But no, I'm delighted to hear that you liked it. I think that for me, when I tasted this, it was a lot of banana flakes and a lot of kind of cream and peaches, which I really enjoyed. But then you can add the spices cutting through it from the pot still distillate.
So I would have definitely been over this summer in the distillery. Then I could have tasted all the single casks.
Yeah, well, I suppose something hopefully to look forward to, and to bridge that gap, virtually, as they say.
Yeah, it's so normally I'm over once a year, and then we sit down in one of the tasting slots, and then I try some single casks or just.
Stop! You're making me homesick.
Yeah, it's like, and then I'm choosing a new single cask for Germany, or just getting some cask samples from not yet finished whiskeys. So I really enjoy this always, and we always do that at 10 o'clock in the morning, because then the distillery is quiet, and then Alex or anyone else has a bit more time to have a conversation and to sit down and have a good chat. It's hard to try these all at 10 o'clock in the morning, but
yes, I know from experience. Although you're dead right, it's the best time to go in, because even in terms of our milling, our mill, I think we stop a little bit later than 10 o'clock in the morning. But even in the distillery, there's not as much noise if you're going around and having a look. And you've been to the distillery many times, but have you been to kind of other areas in Ireland, or have you just sort of stuck locally around the Pale?
No, I think I was in nearly every distillery, not at all yet, but nearly every. Some I wanted this year, but it couldn't happen. So I'm a bit sad that I couldn't be over this year. So Teeling is always my stop in Dublin. So I was there 5 times already at the distillery. And
nice. A diehard fan. And you'll know, of course, that in Dublin now there's a kind of a local resurgence. We have 4 distilleries that are active in Dublin City. So 5 years ago, when I started off, or when you first were Teeling, there was really nothing in the area in terms of urban distilleries. So it's great to see that growth. In Ireland now we've 34 distilleries in different levels of production. And I think, as I said earlier, this diversity in the category is what makes it so exciting, and why Irish whiskey is growing at such a rapid rate.
That's right. Yeah, it's really interesting to see what happens everywhere. So, and as you said, so my story with Teeling is since 2013, 2014. So I was the first one ever having a Teeling single cask bringing on the market.
Oh wow, that's some achievement to have.
It was like just when they sold Cooley Distillery, and they announced that they will build a distillery. And then I wrote an email to Jack and said, "Hi, I'm Mareike from Germany. I wanted to buy a cask from you." So something like that. And he was like, "Okay, I can get you some samples and we can choose a cask. And you can do the first single cask ever done by
Teeling." That's an incredible story. And particularly, in the early days, like we obviously invested in a large volume from Cooley and Cumbegan, which the Teelings, operated from 1987. But to have that opportunity to, taste some of the casks from the very, very early days, I'd say was a phenomenal experience. I, of course, have been with Teeling since 2016. So I just after the very opening of the distillery in Dublin. Yeah,
it's like I had the 11-year-old bourbon cask single malt in cask strength. So this was very unusual to bottle a whiskey in cask strength. So
Whereas now you look at the market the way it is, and it's cask strength left, right, and center. It's very popular, which again is another layer to the category, which I think is great.
That's of course, that's very good. Yeah. So we have here another comment. Teeling's innovation in the use of different woods for maturation and finishing is brilliant. Oh yeah, the Chinkopin. This was also very good finish. Amberana, ginger beer, to mention just a few. Yeah, the Chinkopin I bought at the distillery a bottle. I really like that one.
Oh yeah, nice. It's great to see you, Michael. Anyway, it's good to see a familiar face. Yeah, so what you're talking about there is all our distillery exclusives, where we homed in on alternative wood variants. And again, a lot of these, in a similar way to say the collaborations, which I'm sure we'll chat a little bit later on. Each of these are kind of a learning process for ourselves, and very much are an indication of the way that we want to go forward with our whiskey for the next 5, 10, 15, however many years. So the first distillery exclusive with wood variations that we did was, as far as my memory recalls now, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, any of the Teeling diehard fans, was the chestnut. So we used some chestnut barrels, some PX Brandy 700-liter chestnut casks, which worked out exceptionally well. Chestnut, it's used a lot in the wine industry. It's still happened to find its way, into the whiskey industry. I know there are a good few producers in Ireland, but of course in Scotland they can't use chestnut as part of their legislation. And chestnut, it's not as temperamental as people think. It doesn't leak in every hole of every corner of the barrel, but it does have higher gallic acids and higher levels of tannins that kind of sit it closer to European oak and gives a beautiful color, like really, really ruby red after only a couple of months. So that was the first distillery exclusive we did, and was very, very happy with the results. We've previously, worked with some other wood variants that gradually made their way in. So the likes of Irish oak, which was most recently, we did a charity bottling of 300 bottles at the start of all this madness, at the start of COVID-19, and all the proceeds went back to frontline workers, which I think is very, very admirable of the Teeling brothers. We also worked with Hungarian oak and Chinkopin. So Chinkopin, it's an Appalachian white oak from the northern kind of regions of America. And the Chinkopin is really interesting. I actually only tried it there again recently, and really, really heavy on kind of sandalwood or varnish. Like, it reminds me on the nose of a freshly varnished table. It has that incredible kind of timber on the nose. And then there's all these lovely sort of marzipan and nougat and a lovely kind of nuttiness to it as well. But yeah, what you're referring to is all the distillery exclusives that we've done to date. So they'll all be fairly limited bottlings.
Yeah, Tina says she's looking forward to the wild cherry finish.
Oh yeah, the Amberana and the cherry. So you're referring to the recent masterclass we had at the Wonders of Wood, where we looked at some of these alternative wood types, be that ash or Mizunara or cherry wood or Amberana. And the two that we chose, I was kind of having my fingers crossed and praying, please let us choose either the Amberana or the cherry wood, because they were my two favorites. And it was great to see the response on the night. There was so much tasting notes. There was so much interaction and kind of back and forth between people, and really just, I think brought the two releases alive, possibly even more than what you get in a live product launch. And the Amberana, it's a Brazilian hardwood that previously held some local spirits. We're going to be doing a single cast for that. The cherry wood as well at the same time. So they're something to look out for in the very, very near future. But yeah, Germany's gotten some great single casks as well. Like the one I've tried most recently was actually in chestnut. We did a 13-year-old single malt in chestnut casks for Germany just last year. And it was exceptionally well received. So I think it's something possibly you'll see more of in Germany, not just around the world, because I know there's the interest there. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, when you say exclusive bottlings for Germany, maybe we can go to the next one, Pinot Noir. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Pinot Noir, to give you a bit of a background on this one, this is part of our small batch collaborations. So the small batch collaborations, they are all essentially an extension or development of the flavors from our flagship whiskey, which you can see here behind me, the Teeling small batch. So the kind of the base or the control spirit in any of this experimentation with atypical cask types is predominantly, 3 parts of grain and 1 part of malt that have been matured for up to 6 years in American bourbon barrels. Now we use the collaborations to kind of test the waters, and again, pushing this idea of what is possible within the flavor discovery of Irish whiskey. So they're very much not a fad or a box ticking exercise. We do, like everything, take this as how can we get better at our whiskey all the time. So there's now 10 collaborations to date. This is actually the second collaboration that we've done with this particular German producer. And I can tell you honestly, Mareike, I don't purchase every single Teeling's collaboration. I think if I would, I'd have it, 3 or 4 behind me. There's 10 of them in total, as much as I would love to. But the Pinot Noir, I have to get my hands on. I'm not only a big fan of whiskey matured in wine, but I think with this particular producer, we've had massive positive results from them. So of course I'm referring to Reichstadt von Bull. Apologies, Mareike, if my pronunciation is absolutely abysmal. Perhaps you could say it in German.
Yeah, I was there last year when the Riesling cask was released.
Yeah,
it's incredible. So it's Reichstadt von Bull. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you struggled to say it as well, so it makes me feel a little bit better. But so
it's incredible there. It's very nice. We were there down where the casks, where the wine is laid down, and it was amazing to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, there's this really nice synergy between Teeling and between the Reichstadt von Bull or RVB. They're, of course, family-owned winery. They're a biodynamic winery based in Diedesheim, and they've been, have this history of 150 years. Like, although the Teelings are an exceptionally young and dynamic and new brand of Irish whiskey, the family itself has got deep roots in urban distillation in particular that date back many centuries, as well as their kind of mentality or methods. They're very much a forward-thinking brand, in my opinion, in Germany. They're looking to revitalize, these very traditional styles like Pinot Noir, but with a slightly more modern edge. And the Riesling, was the first one we did with them. It was back in 2017 or 2018 at this point. But it was a very limited release. It was just for Germany. There was only a couple of thousand bottles. I think it was maybe 1,300 bottles in total. And I still remember, I have it in my mind's eye when I went into the control room in Teeling and tried it with Alex and the team. And I just remember being so blown away by the kind of floral side of it. So this was the Riesling I'm talking about. Like, obviously you expect the wine influence, you expect the minerality and the citrus and the bitterness or the astringency, but it had this lovely kind of floral nose with honeysuckle and kind of fresh orchard fruits, and was just so unusual and so different to any of the previous collaborations to date. So we went back to the Reichstadt von Bull, and of course for this one, the Pinot Noir. It's up to 6 years in American bourbon barrels, and then 12 months in total in German biodynamic Pinot Noir. So have a taste of it. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, you can really get the wine notes.
It's interesting. I don't know for yourself, but for me, again, it was almost this crescendo effect where it actually starts off very light and inviting, and the kind of the tannins or the red fruits gradually build their way up. When I first smell it, what I tend to pick up is a lot of these almost sort of artificial sweeteners like candy floss or bubble gum, but it really quickly builds into these really mature fruits. Like prunes or sultanas, and on the palate it has this lovely quick dry finish, which I just absolutely adore. It's very, very tasty whiskey.
Yeah, Tina is asking if I have it on my shop. I don't have it yet on my shop, but I will order it very soon. I just organized everything, so you can order it in the near future on my shop. And we have for the cask finished, any plans for the rare Mizunara oak?
Well, it's a good question, Fabio. At the moment, short answer, no. There's no immediate plans to release anything in Mizunara. I remember originally, actually, there was plans to look at, was it the Rugby World Cup, which is when we looked at potentially doing something in Mizunara last year, I think it was. But no, at the moment, it's kind of been put on halt. In terms of those alternative wood variants, the main two we're focusing on right now are the Amberana and the cherry wood in particular.
Yeah.
But coming back to the Pinot Noir, again, this is a very limited release. There's only 3,270 bottles in total. So I think we'll struggle to keep it on the shelves. It's going to absolutely fly.
Yeah, it's and this will be also in the tasting set for the weekend of 21st and 22nd of November. So everybody can try it and then they can order the bottle. So it's really good. I really like it.
So this is basically just teasing everybody tonight.
Yeah, I think it's a very good tasting set. We have the Teeling single malt, we have the Teeling pot still, we have the Teeling Pinot Noir, and we have Teeling new make. So it's a very interesting set to taste.
Yeah, great variety, and it means you get to try some of the core range as well as the limited releases, which is fantastic. And not only that, but for diehard fans like Tina, or for Fabio who are watching tonight, even the core range is evolving. Like, bear in mind, when we started off, as you rightly said, in 2015, 2014, we were working off a pre-existing stock. Whereas now, we're sourcing a lot more of our whiskey from Newmarket Square. Within 5 years, we've laid down, I think, approximately about 35,000 casks. So there's this big changeover, and we're now being faced with this very exciting question of, like, what cask types are going to work with these, and what way are we going to treat them? Are they going to be single cask? Are they going to be blended? Is it going to be vatted? These are all the things that are very, very exciting for us at the moment for the kind of next 5 years.
Yeah.
One thing to mention on the Pinot Noir is, obviously with a lot of these collaborations, we are kind of blurring the spirit categories, if you will, a little bit. Like other ones that we've done have been with gin casks, with ginger beer is the most recent one we've done. As we all know, whiskey and ginger is a great match. Pineapple rum. So there is this kind of crossover between spirits categories, and it gives us this opportunity to talk and learn from other producers in completely different sectors. I'm really working with companies who share the same mentality as us, who are forward thinking and who want to create the best products possible.
Yeah. That's right. Very good. We have 2 more to go. And I think the next one is also a very special whiskey. So the black bottle again. And it's the Teeling Brabazon 3. Yeah,
the Brabazon. So this is the 3rd edition now that we're on to at the moment. So this is actually the 2nd series that Teeling ever created, and you can see completely revamping of the packaging, which is absolutely beautiful. Even the inside as well, you'll notice.
Yeah.
So this is a 14-year-old single malt. It's bottled actually a little bit higher, so I'm sure for any of you cask strength aficionados, you'll be pleased to hear that it's just below cask strength. It's 49.5.
Yeah.
And I think with this, it really was the perfect ABV to bottle it at. It allowed a lot of the flavors to come through in sort of the right way. Because I've tried samples of this at different ABVs, and I think 49.5 was really the sweet spot. Brabazon, it is a traditional Dublin kind of family name, or they've ties to Dublin at least, that date back as far as the 16th or 17th century. The very furthest kind of back in their lineage is a man called William Brabazon, who actually I think was a captain or a soldier who was working for Henry VIII. So he came over to Ireland and they kind of laid down roots there, but they really gave a lot back to Dublin City. So we wanted to celebrate a local family name. With this, with our single malts, we do try to make something that tends to move away from the traditional flavors of the single malt category. But with this one here, it's definitely a little bit more traditional, with just that slight kind of Teeling twist. So it's 11 years bourbon, 3 years in Jimenez Spinola. So we're sourcing some very, very high grade sherry coming from a small scale bodega in Jerez that have actually been using PX grapes for the guts of now 300 years. So they've got this long, long lineage of producing Pedro Jimenez. And the barrels we sought came from their cellars that were actually sitting there for the guts of 90 years. So it's, the bottom of the cellar system. And the nose, my God, you could smell it all day.
Yeah, it's
it's amazing.
It's a very full nose.
It's definitely, I think, one of my favorite whiskeys at the moment from Teeling. Definitely up there. With the previous editions, they had immense success in Germany in particular. Batch 1, or I should say Brabazon 1 and Brabazon 2 are both almost now completely sold out. But the Brabazon 1 was matured in 6 different sherry barrels. So for the Brabazon 3, we kind of homed in on one particular producer. And of course, the second edition was port. Was 3 styles of port: tawny port, ruby port, and white port. And picked up best non-age statement single malt at the World Whiskey Awards last year. So I think it's a really, really nice addition to the series. Again, limited, only 10,000 bottles in production, 49.5% non-chill filtered.
Very nice. So here you get the full sherry notes. Yeah,
I think it's definitely your typical sherry bomb, but it also has these slightly different components to it. Like the first thing that I get is actually a lot of dark chocolate. Then it's all the nuttiness and the red fruits and the tobacco. There is this really kind of hint of, so again, if you're someone who likes to eat and drinking whiskeys together, it's a good one. I often eat this with chocolates. I'm a bit of a chocoholic as well as a whiskey fiend. Yeah,
whiskey is very good for food pairing. Chocolate always works, sometimes cheese. What I did in one of those live streams, I did whiskey with gummy bears.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I really like gummy bears and I really like to eat them with whiskey.
Okay, yeah, so the Pinot Noir in particular, think of gummy bears. It has that, as I said, almost a kind of artificial sweetener at the very start.
Yeah, you can gummy beers. That would be good. So a very like this one, sherry. It might be too heavy, so you really need to choose the whiskeys. So for a sherry, I would go with a chocolate that's
particularly like a darker chocolate. I think can work well. And even something with a little bit of saltiness. I think you've got salt and sweet, which go really well together. But the finish is really mellow. 49.5%. It's exceptionally smooth.
Yeah, that's right. That's very good. Yeah, I really like this series. Will there be also a fourth one, or will it be just the 3?
So it's interesting that you asked the question. Yes, we are looking at a 4th edition. We'll have something relatively similar to the 3rd series, or the Brabazon 3, where we're homing in on one specific component of port in particular. That's the plan anyway. So again, hopefully something to look out for in the near future. I think the great thing about Teeling is, because there's so many different areas that we're working on, there's constantly new releases that you can get your hands on. But yeah, there will be a subsequent addition to the Brabazon.
Yeah. Here's a question. Do you distribute in France? I'm sure.
We do, yeah, Simon. So our distributor in France is Dugas. They are based in Créteil in Paris. So we've been working very closely with Duga actually since pretty much the very start. And you can find them across a variety of different independent spirit stores. So maybe you can tell me, where you're based in France, or we do also sell them through some wholesalers. But predominantly you'll find them in whiskey shops or in spirit stores.
Yeah.
So a great one to look out for in France, if you're watching, is we have just released a series, again, looking at wine, kind of similar to the Reichstag von Bull, but using some Margaux. So some Margaux wine casks called the Sommelier Select series. But that is exclusive at the moment to France. So it's something to look out for.
Wow. Yeah, and Tina says, well, we need some gummy beers for the whiskey weekend. Yeah, I think
absolutely. You've made me absolutely starving, Mareike. I just want to eat sweets and drink whiskey. But I think I'm really curious because I've tried donuts and I've tried sugary things with whiskey, and I think gummy bears could actually be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Your stomach doesn't really like it, but your mouth,
yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but where were Haribo created? Is Haribo German or is it French?
Yeah, it's German. It's German.
Yeah, I thought it was German.
So on my back, I always have here some packaged.
Oh my god! Possibly you can virtually pass them through the screen.
Yeah, then I can try. Yeah, so
funny. Like I used to spend a lot of time in Germany as a kid, and I still remember getting those packets. I don't know if they still do it, but of gummy bears, and they had a little toy in the inside of the pack.
Yeah, not anymore. But
no, it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone, but it's good. I think I do a food purchasing list for all the people attending the Irish Whiskey Weekend for chocolate and some crisps and some chocolate gummy beers and things, so that you can have a nice weekend.
And it's the great thing about whiskey is it has this versatility that you can use it with loads. Like what I've gotten really into in the last couple of years is using spirits and cooking as well, which is a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
So Neil, he will also attend the Irish Whiskey Weekend. He says these are senseless carbs. You get your protein shakes and then you're fine.
Shame on us, Neil, and it's only Monday evening. We haven't even gotten to the weekend.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm very excited about tasting this last whiskey. I really like the bottle form. It's very different.
Yeah, so obviously, I wanted to give you a sneak peek, even if it's not going to be available just quite yet. Something, again, to look forward to in 2021. But the Black Pits is, we've done a completely new bottle, a completely revamp of the design and the packaging and the tubes and every element of it. Even the shape of the bottle, is completely different to anything else we've used so far. But this is something, obviously I mentioned to you, I'm a big peat fan as well as a non-peated whiskey drinker. So when I knew that we were going to release this, I was incredibly excited and was very difficult, I think, to keep the secret of Teeling's first peated whiskey. Obviously, our second whiskey from our distillery. It's the first triple distilled peated single malt from Dublin. A bottle of 46% ABV, non-chill filtered. And Black Pits, again, is reminiscent of the local area. So it's actually a street just behind Teeling, or an area just behind the Teeling silos, that was renowned for malting houses and for tanneries back in the day. So the Black Pits would have been these large pits in the ground that they would have used for leather making. And for this one, we decided, or we at least had the aim of creating a whiskey that was peated, but that was an unconventional peated single malt. So what I mean by that is, the peat that we've sourced is not this heavy iodine medicinal smoke that you'll expect from like an Islay single malt. Like I mentioned, say Lefroy or Ardbeg. So for you, Mareike, it's not going to be what you're expecting in a great way. And the peat that we've taken is from Glenesk in Speyside. So the original ppm was 55 ppm, parts per million. So quite high, you know, when you're initially starting off, pretty much in the same realm as Ardbeg. But after we decided to triple distill this, it lowered the phenol content significantly. So down as far as only 15 ppm. So it's lovely light smoke.
Yeah.
It's more of like a barbecue char. Just going to rinse out my glass.
So the smell is very nice. So you have to peat in the nose, but you still have fruit notes.
Yeah, so this is where we get the really nice balance between orchard fruits and peat smoke. And this is not something that we have created, you know, within the last year or so. This has actually been influenced by some of our previous releases. And this is something that I've, you know, mentioned a lot tonight, that it's constantly taking these learnings and applying them in a new way. So the learnings we took were originally from the Teeling's 21-year-old, which I'm sure everyone's reaction to the 21-year-old is the same. Their eyes light up. I think it's the holy grail of Teeling whiskey. I still remember, you know, back in the day, you could pick up a bottle of the 21-year-old for like 110 or 120 euro in places like Germany and France. It was a bargain and a half for an absolutely incredible whiskey. So this whiskey, to give you a bit of a background, it was first a 20-year-old single malt, lightly peated, so only 10% peat, matured for a full 20 years in bourbon, and then finished in a Sauterne. So Alex decided to source these regional dessert wines from the south of France. As you can imagine, not the cheapest things in the world. With Sauterne, of course, they allowed noble rot or bacteria, botrytis, to build up on the grapes, which, you know, adds to the price tag. And he decided to add an additional 18 months to the 21-year-old in Sauterne. Now, the result, little did we know that this 21-year-old would eventually become the 24 that won the best single malt in the whole world. So it just goes to show, put your faith in Alex. You know, Alex is very rarely wrong, I think. But really an absolutely stunning result. The 24, of course, was an additional, you know, 3-4 years in Sauterne. That became the 28. And we've now applied this to our core range with the black pits. So that combination of bourbon, Sauterne, and peat smoke is really at the kind of center of this. It's about 2/3 of bourbon and 1/3 of Sauterne. But the difference here is it's 100% peat as opposed to, you know, a 10%. And again, it's a completely new spirit.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get a little bit of that barbecue smoke. In the palate, what you're probably finding now is at the very end, you get a little bit of saltiness, like salted caramel. If not, a lot of people mention, again, grilled fruits, so like grilled pineapple or poached pears, cooked fruits. And then there's also a little bit of that nectarine or marzipan, which is coming through from the Sauterne. But I think the thing that I fell in love with the 21-year-old, and I think it also comes through on this, is the Sauterne kind of gradually lets the peat come through. Like you're probably feeling it now come up and up and up and up and up. It doesn't start like that. It's very, very gradual.
It's good. I like it because you have the balance between those orchard fruits and the peat. I don't like whiskey when you have peated whiskey and you just taste the peat and you have those medicine notes. And you don't have this with this peat. So, yeah, I like it.
I'm glad to hear that we've converted you over to peat.
Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, no, I think that was kind of our intention, was to create something a little bit, again, left of center, and looking at both, you know, peated aficionados, but also people who are looking to come to this particular category for the first time. And I think you were a perfect example of someone who doesn't like peated whiskey, but will also really, really enjoy this particular release. So this will now be part of our core range. You know, where at the moment it's not going to be a limited release, and it will be hopefully available in Germany in 2021.
Yeah, I think maybe in January or so. People still need to wait a bit, but I can recommend it already. It's very good. Yeah. Kevin says it's great to see a peated whiskey that is distilled within the distillery, just how it should be. Yeah. So no coolie peated whiskey. Yeah,
I think it's great to have, you know, more of these releases, because let's not forget, you know, there is still this misconception that Irish whiskey is not peated and Scottish whiskey is peated, and I think it's kind of good to debunk these misconceptions. Like, even before the industrial era or the industrial revolution, you know, what were the two main sources of thermal energy? It would have been coal and turf. And there's a lot of examples or a lot of, I suppose, historical references of particularly poaching or new make spirits that would have been peated in a lot of areas in Northern Ireland. So it's great to revive this culture and bring that extra dimension, which we can now hopefully go toe to toe with the Scots from some of our peated releases.
Yeah.
The very first thing I did actually was I picked up some of the bottles at home and I did a full peated tasting to kind of compare.
Yeah, it's really good. Alex did a good job.
Absolutely. No, he really did.
Yeah. So I think we had 4 really nice whiskeys tonight, and I think Teeling has a very interesting history already, because they were the first distillery again up in Dublin. And I think we can look forward what will come on the market soon. And yeah, first now I look forward to the Irish Whiskey Weekend, having the tasting with Alex there, tasting the special things like the Pinot Noir and having the pot still whiskey in there.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it would be great to pick Alex's brain. As always, you know, he brings an extra interesting story to the process, having 100% hands in the process. But I hope everybody enjoys the whiskey weekend, because there's some fantastic whiskeys on the lineup by the sounds of it.
Yeah. So for tonight, thank you very much for taking your time for this interesting stream, getting so much information about Teeling. It was very interesting.
No problem at all, Mareike. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, and thank you for the audience watching us, giving the comments, and I wish everybody a nice evening, a nice week, and thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.